Hello, I'm Pastor Brian Perry from First Baptist Church in Tekonsha. Thank you for joining us today. I want to give you a few announcements here before we look into Scripture. We're going to be looking in Matthew again this week. At church on Sunday, June 7th, we are going to have a drive-in communion service, kind of a drive-through communion service. We're going to have that service at 9:30. We're going to have another one at 11 o'clock. Very short service, but you can arrive and receive the elements, serve yourself the elements, and then be able to have communion with whoever is there. I'll be out on the lawn leading that service. Next week we're going to have church outside at our pavilion on the east side of our church there. So plan on bringing a lawn chair, and we'll keep our social distancing going. Masks are encouraged, but we're not going to tell you have to wear one. That'll be up to you. And that service will be at 9:30 at the church, and it'll be an outside service. And then we'll make decisions in the weeks following that as to where and what church services we have, but we will plan to regularly be meeting from that point on, as long as we're able to do that. I want to share some things from the news this week, and they probably aren't new to you. Latest information on this pandemic: we've had over 110,000 Americans that have passed away. We've had over 5,600 people in the state of Michigan, 23 in Calhoun County. We've had a week with police brutality, demonstrations, riots. We've had presidential elections heating up, and we're living at a time where unemployment in this country is over 13%, and in the state of Michigan, unemployment is 22%. So almost 1 in 4 are not working at this time. So things are not good. It's not a healthy time, and I want to call us, though, to keep perspective. And by keep perspective, I mean keep an eternal perspective. Now, last week we looked at Matthew chapter 6, and I encouraged you to read all of Matthew chapter 6 for your devotions this week, because we haven't been able to receive our daily devotions that we hand out. What I have for you today, if you can make it to church, and we'll get posted for you, is I have a sheet of daily devotions for the month of June and the month of July. And so even if you haven't got the booklet that you usually use, we'll have some scriptures. We'll all be reading the same things during the rest of June and the month of July. So we'll provide that for you today. Matthew 6, we read about don't worry over daily needs, because worry doesn't do any good anyway, and because God provides for what we need, and that we are to seek His kingdom. If we do that, then everything else He takes care of. Today I want to read from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, and then down through verse 30. And it says this: "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Those are the words of Jesus, and He was encouraging people to come to Him. And I want to start with the last part of that. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. That's what we want out of life. But there's some other things that Jesus promises too. He says if we follow Him, if we walk on the pathway, the direction that He leads us, we're going to find rest, but it's rest for the soul. We're going to be able to have peace and be able to find rest and relaxation when we're not busy. And so, one of the worst things is having to be up all night and awake all night and not being able to sleep. Jesus promises rest and peace. And He says, take my yoke. You see, this is a voluntary connection with Jesus. It's a choice that we make to be connected to Jesus. The yoke that's talked about here is not the yoke in an egg. It's the yoke of being hitched to a wagon, to pull the wagon. And so Jesus is saying, man, it's a light pull. If you hook to him, it's an easy road. And if you've seen in parades, sometimes they'll have two horses pulling the wagon, and they'll have a small horse, a young horse, connected to it, not really pulling, but just learning how to do it, learning how to walk along. And so Jesus says if we voluntarily connect with him, he says we can learn from him because he is a humble and a gentle teacher. And that's what we want in life too. We want teachers who are gentle, we want teachers who are humble, and then we want to have an easy and a light burden. And that's what Jesus promises if we do things his way. And he doesn't mention anything about any circumstances or anything that's going to change that. And then in Matthew chapter 23, we're reminded to keep our priorities in the right order. If we keep our priorities in the right order, then again, we can experience the peace that God has for us. I read from Matthew 23, verse 23. And again, it's the words of Jesus, and he's talking to the Pharisees and the teachers, the religious leaders of the day, and he says this, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." We need to get our priorities, keep our priorities in the right order, even when all around us things are difficult. What's he say? Here he says religious activities, and the one he mentions is tithing and offering, but he's talking all religious activities. And he says religious activities, which now are restricted on our behalf, he says they're important. Offerings, tithes, worship, those are important things. But he says they're not the most important things. The most important things are faithfulness to God and how we treat other people. Treat other people right. And he mentions two things. Treat them with justice and treat them with mercy. We're challenged to make sure that we are just in our dealings with other people and that we are full of mercy, that we are quick to give mercy to people who need it. Just as we're quick to want it from God, we need to be quick to give it to other people. And we need to make sure that we're walking faithful to God. And Jesus lived at a time when the political climate was terrible. Rome had control of Israel, and he was teaching these to people who were not in good situations. And so I think they apply to us. And he's saying, keep your priorities in the right order. Keep the eternal priorities right. Religious activities are important, but the most important things are our faithfulness to God and how we treat other people. Are we a person of mercy? Are we a person of justice? And we need to make sure that we are voluntarily connecting ourselves to Jesus. And if we do that, we're going to find rest, we're going to find peace, we're going to find an easy road, and we're going to find a gentle and a humble teacher. I hope that's what you're able to experience this week. I hope to see you Sunday morning the 7th and certainly Sunday morning the 14th. Again, have a great week.